And I have one other opening that I want to show. And that's Indiana Jones. And this, again, this is the introduction of the main character, but the way that they set up the characters, it's kind of interesting. Okay, so we went from the Paramount Pictures logo to superimpose that mountain to superimpose our hero in front of the mountain. Okay, so within one shot, that's important right there. Okay, within one shot, we went from a logo to establish a location to establish our character within the same center frame. Okay? Now, all figures move into frame in non-disclosure, meaning all in silhouette, right? And then one turns around. He's the first one to turn around, this guy. Okay? So what happens with this guy and the other guy, there's two main guides that are going along with him that are featured in this situation. Okay? Indiana Jones is still, we wait to reveal him. Okay? But we're seeing this guy looking back with a worried look on his face. So as these guys are moving into this area, one of the guides is looking behind him, saying there might be a danger here. That alerts us to possible danger. And who looks back? This guy too. So out of the whole grouping of people, it's only those two guys that we pause and look at, because they're the only two important ones right now. Now, a scene like this, passing through this area from behind these foreground areas, or these foreground trees and stuff like this, says two things. One, we're in a dense jungle, but two, if you look at them, there could be somebody in the woods following along, like this. See this shot? This is from a POV, right? We never said whose POV it is, but it's back through these woods. And you get the sense that, they're moving along in this dense jungle area, right? But then when you cut back and you're moving the camera with it, you get the sense that somebody else is in those woods as well. See these foreground elements? And you've just delivered, there could be somebody else in the woods. As they get deeper into the jungle, this guy who we never really see, but he's startled by this statuary. Now these guys walk in, and we never see Indy's face. We only see a little bit of him, and then we see these two communicating. Now there's a confirmation that there's other people around, and you notice he knows what's going on. We don't yet. And we have to learn from this guy that those are poison tips. Okay? So now they know they're being followed, or they think. And the other guy says, hey, if they knew we were here, we'd be dead already. So we're upping the danger as we go into this smoke-filled jungle. And again, that's important information. This is South America, 1936. The important thing that is 1936 is it's before World War II. It's close enough that we have Nazis, but it's not a war movie. Had it been 7 years later, there'd be soldiers, right? We'd have to show American soldiers. So it's cleverly placed just before, on the verge, where the Nazis are on the rise, they're the bad guys, but, that's the theme. Okay, so we go to, he pulls out this bit of a map, and he asks for the other part. So he's He's got this map, and look how he's framed this. Okay? Okay? That foreground element is just framing this other guy. And he uses that as the frame, right? So we have foreground, midground, and background back here. The important detail is around this guy's head. You see? That way they can keep him simplified, but it's the detail around him that actually becomes the active area. Okay? And his little silhouette in here of the lighting on him, and the fact that you can simplify this down to a simple dark silhouette in there makes this active right in here as well. So that he's using the map to frame the guy. And we go into the next scene that moves forward. I mean, a lot of people look at some of Spielberg's shots as moving in, when there's a important line or important something going on. Well, in this case, yeah, the camera moves in and he steps in to camera. And that just builds the intensity. Just boom. It builds intensity from that other static pose where he moves in. And then we cut to the gun. We hear the noise. And then we get the little action. And he comes into light. And there's our reveal of our hero. And then we have the reaction. And again, here is one of the things that we do in telling stories with visuals is the audience needs to know how to feel about a character. And it isn't always what they do that makes us recognize what to think or how to feel. It's how others react to them. So when we're watching and we see these other guys react to him and he's walking by and they're like looking at him like, whoa, we've just revealed this guy, and the other guy is like revering him, okay? So it tells us how to feel about this guy, okay? And builds relationships between them. But we need these other people to react in order to know how to feel about somebody. So all of your scenes are going to be an action or a reaction. Okay, so it's either going to be an action or reaction. Now, sometimes there's an action and reaction within one scene. Okay, sometimes they'll get ganged up like that, or a reaction and then an action. Now, when you're putting your imagery together and you write your little line down and then you're blocking out just the descriptive elements there, you might end up finding, and one thing that you can do, and this involves the edit of your imagery, is you might look at patterns. Now, patterns being, if you think of like a computer patterns, we have ones and zeros. Right? So this patterning creates our code. Okay, so this is a binary kind of a system, right? Well, if we're looking at action and reaction, and we can consider it the same way, we're going to see that there might be action, action, reaction, action, action, reaction, action, action, reaction. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're creating a timing, a tempo, a pacing that the audience isn't aware of, but they'll feel. It's like a melody. Now, what will happen is if you change that abruptly, the audience feels there's some change. They don't know why, they don't know what, they just know there's a change here. So if you have an action and then a reaction and someone else's reaction, and someone else's reaction, and then it goes to another action, and then there's multiple reactions again, and then it goes to another action, and then multiple reactions, and then maybe one big reaction, and that's a prelude to that next action. That next action is going to be even bigger than anything else because you've just changed just right at that point. So you're taking your pacing. Not everybody does this, okay? This isn't kind of a standard rule or whatever, but it is a way to help your edit or plan things out in a way that will actually build a subliminal tempo to the way that you deliver your visual information. So you can create these tempos, these elements of pacing and timing, and how that can work out in your imagery.
Nothing anymore than the reaction. What you have to go back to the next thing, what happens with the reaction next. So you have action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Think of it this way too. If you have reaction, 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 action, what's happening is you're seeing these reactions to something. You don't know what yet. That builds anticipation. So if you want to set up anticipation, you might be putting reaction, 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 like boom, there you go. Okay? If you want to show the influence of an action, you might deliver the action, and then the reactions show how we should respond to that action. And it happens a lot when you're looking at suspense movies. Next time you watch a movie where there's a lot of suspense or whatever drama, we'll point it out next week. We're going to take a look at The Natural, okay? And they play that up a lot, in that movie, where they work the reactions, because, the guy's at bat and all the crowd's waiting, and you don't know if he's going to strike out, get a hit, whatever, it's like a pitching duel or whatever. You see all the reactions of the crowds, and it builds up to it. And so, they played out that way. Kind of fun and interesting. So now that changed the pace. Once he cracked his whip, we know who he is, and now he's getting in, going in, and you can see the whole pacing of this. It was all like tentative, and all of a sudden, boom, that exchange, and now they're on the move. Okay, they're on the move. There's no slowing down now. This is picking up the action, and there's a lot of information that's just bogus. It's like, look, nobody's come out of that cave alive. How does he know that? There's a lot of information that is just said just for our benefit, just so that it builds the tension, right? There's a lot of unknowns that they're talking about like they know what's going on and ahead of time in here. But again, you can take a look at the non-disclosure and disclosure, right? Again, they're playing Indy down and getting all the reactions out of the other guy in this, because he's the scared guy. And we need to know Jones isn't scared. The other guy is scared. He's cautious. Okay? Okay, now it's his turn. Look at the hand gesture right in front of him. And now we get the full effect, the gruesome quality. He knocks them off of the back, and they scurry away, and they move deeper into the cave. Introduce a blue light. The light is a big issue now. This warm neutral, and then all of a sudden here's this blue light going on. Stay out of the light, is what he says. And there's Forrestal. And there's his reaction, and his reaction. And his reaction again. And he knows who he is. Okay? So that's kind of playing that whole thing out. You can see he's serious through the whole thing, where the other guy is just freaking out. That oftentimes is building suspense, building tension. So if you want to build anticipation, you're going to show reactions first. Because you're seeing or witnessing reactions to what may occur. And then you see what's complicating the issue. You delivered that information afterwards. The other way, which we saw in this case a number of times, Jones makes a simple move, and we're seeing the other guys react, and building the expression through that. I have another clip out of that, another little sequence that's full played up comedy. I mean, it's dry humor, but the imagery plays out the subtext, which is really funny. And it's a moment when Alan Shepard is going to be the first one to go in the rocket. And he's anticipating the launch and it's delayed, delayed, delayed. And as it's delayed, we cut to the house, his house, where there's reporters and the wives are sitting there and they're all pouring coffee. And you hear her say in the background, oh, he was so nervous, he must have drinking 5 cups of coffee. And it cuts to him and now he's got to go to the bathroom. And they keep delaying, and he asked to pee in his suit. And they're like, we don't know what'll happen. It could cause a short. It could, the whole thing could go up. It could start a fire. It could be, all of a sudden this little thing became something. It was the delay. Well, the shots that they intercut, the visuals they put in there are hysterical. But because they're just eluding, and it cut to him, you'll see him next week, but it's a way of kind of crafting humor into this very serious moment. And it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. I think what I'm getting out of that, it's a first person reaction. I'm feeling what they're feeling. That's one way to look at it. The only reason I wouldn't say absolutely, because I think there's many ways to do things, but when you see a pattern, when you see a connection there, that's a good place to start, and say, yeah, it could be used for that. But it might be, I wouldn't discount invention. There's always ways to invent new things. So that's why I was trying to keep an open mind about the stuff, because, the next thing you know, you're going to see someone pulling something off. You go, how did they do that? Or making you feel a certain way that you didn't think you would feel, or delivering story in a way that you never seen someone do story before. The idea of the kind of the adventure, drama, comedy play on a number of Spielberg things. I think one of the classic ones that he did was Goonies. And that's why it remained a classic, because it's this roller coaster adventure suspense kind of thing seen through the eyes of these kids. And it just makes everybody feel like their childhood. I mean, revert you back to your childhood and the fun kind of crazy things that happened, and the way you remember things are bigger than life and that kind of stuff. And I think there's a number of movies that built on that. Some successfully. Stranger Things, Super 8. Super 8 was Spielberg was like an executive producer. That was J.J. Abrams that did that. And I think in that, as much as I liked it, it was kind of mimicking Spielberg. You know what I mean? But it wasn't quite as strong as some of the others, but it was kind of mimicking I have some other things too that are abstract in nature, but they're so, like the beginning of To Catch a Thief too, if you haven't seen that. The beginning of that movie is completely abstract, but if you look at like I was saying before, where if you just write a story, those words are depicted clearly. But they're images that depict the story, and they'll go from a reality to an abstract to a reality to an abstract. But when you string them all together, you get the whole clear story. And so you don't mind that it goes to an abstract. You get it. You just roll with it. I'll show you next week too. The thing that I like to look at and that I appreciate, in films, is when you watch it once, you just enjoy it. When you watch it again, you realize that the visuals are telling a story with the dialogue. There's an interaction there. And you're seeing something in a new way. And then when you see it the third time, you see something new again, another layer. And to me, when that happens, when I see those are the movies that I really appreciate. And I'll go back and look at them again. It's like, how did they do that? Why did they do that? What is it that makes it that way? Because I think the one way I look at it is just this. After working on like 30 movies, I realize one thing: movies are forever. And they deserve the best effort that you possibly can, because they're going to live longer than me. They're going to live longer than, and if they're good, they'll be watched over and over. So just the notion that you might be working on something that's going to completely outlive you, and if it's of value, it will be watched. I think that is pretty awesome, and the responsibility that comes with that to me is huge. I think that's our responsibility, to do something special, that way, because it will last. Some movies that deserve another view too are things like Saving Private Ryan. Yeah. It's worth looking at again. I mean, there's simple scenes with the soldiers just kind of, they just kind of sit down for a rest and they're just talking and stuff. But the way that they're composed in there might be a rifle, a knife or something. These things are placed, just to move your eye around. I mean, you couldn't see it another way. When you realize, oh, wait a minute, he's not just holding a gun. It had to be right there. It had to be there. It couldn't be anywhere else. And when Tom Hanks he walks away from his guys and has a meltdown. He starts crying, falling apart because he lost one of his men and stuff like this. But he's taking it all personal and taking it all in. And he does that he's sitting on a broken wall in front of a broken radio array, and where things are a shamble and a skeleton of a shamble, and he's, against that. Everything else is against this countryside, and he goes to this one moment where he's in front of these broken components. And when you set things up like that, that's the interesting thing too, is when you set up, you say, okay, we're going to have this scene with a half blown out building and a family and there's tension and there's a sniper and all this. You can put those things in, but then your choices of where to shoot and what to favor and how you do that and the timing, those all become really dramatic. How you could favor one thing and then turn the tables, and create a bit more tension in that scenario. It's like you approach the family, the kids are screaming and stuff like that. It's, oh, do something about it. But then all of a sudden, bullet comes flying by and then another one, or, boom, someone gets taken out. It's a shock value. And then the way you play that out could be really interesting. From someone coming from landscape painting and going all of a sudden saying, why? And saying images have to have more, they should say more. Even a landscape painting now, I look at it and they're harder for me to do because I'm looking to get more out of them than I ever did before. And that's a struggle. It's like raise the bar. You got to raise the bar because there's more to talk about. But you have to be the one to determine this is what I want to talk about. How do I want to say it? And now look at that world and infuse that into that world. That's the add-on that is making art, basically.